What if hatred didn't start with malice, but it instead started with hope? What if the people who lash out the hardest weren't actually born cruel, but somewhere along the way they were crushed by longing, longing for love, longing for respect, longing just to matter, and slowly and painfully that longing just collapsed on itself. This episode is about that collapse. We're tracing the emotional journey from longing to loathing, not just to understand why bitterness takes root, but to name it before it consumes us. Because the men who end up the most angry didn't start there. They started soft. They started open. They started wanting something that was good. But when that goodness doesn't come, when you reach out and nothing reaches back, when you're op- when you're opening your heart, but that becomes a punchline or even worse, a target, something's going to change. You see, hope doesn't just disappear. It begins to rot. And what was once a desire to connect curdles into a fear of ever trying again. This is the path that no one talks about. We talk about bitterness like it's a personality flaw. We talk about angry men like they're the villains, and we never ask, how did they get here? So let's ask it. Let's ask that question because it matters. Because maybe maybe you're not there yet, but you're close. Maybe you're tired and you're worn down and you're wondering if connection is even worth it. Or maybe you're already bitter and ashamed of how hard it is to care anymore. Well, either way, we're not here to judge. We're not here to judge that. We're here instead to walk it step by step, emotion by emotion. Let's engage in that space. So let's begin. Let's begin with the most dangerous place a man can find himself, and that is when he is unseen in his sincerity. Imagine this. A boy wants to be loved, not for what he can get, not for what he can prove, but for who he is. And so he shares his thoughts. He tries to be kind. He asks for connection in the only way that he knows how. And the world shrugs, or worse, it laughs. And he's told he's too soft. He's told he's too much. He's told that he has to man up or shut up or prove himself. And so he starts to learn sincerity does not work here. And and if it doesn't work, what's left? Performance, pretending, or silence. And then he starts performing strength to hide his hurt. He he starts chasing status just to cover the shame. And he starts going quiet because every time he speaks from the heart, it costs him. And all that while he's still longing, and he's still hoping, and he's still believing that maybe, just maybe, if he just gets it right, someone might finally choose him. You see, that longing is not weakness. It's it's human. But if it's met with rejection over and over again, it begins to decay. And when longing decays, bitterness begins. But it's subtle at first, right? It looks like it looks like sarcasm. It looks it looks like emotional distance. It it looks like always being busy, always being fine, always brushing things off. But underneath, there's grief. It's not a dramatic kind of a grief. It's not wailing on the floor kind of a grief. It's a quiet grief, the kind that hides in locked jaws and restless nights, the kind that says, I tried and it didn't matter. This is the first step on the path. Longing met with neglect. And neglect over time, it begins to rewire the soul because the soul can only ask so many times, do you see me? Before it stops asking. And that silence, that's where bitterness finds its roots. Bitterness doesn't arrive with a bang. It creeps in slowly, disguising itself as wisdom. It tells you, you're not being cynical, you're just being smart now. It says, this hatred, this is realism. It whispers something like, you've finally learned your lesson. Don't trust, don't hope, and don't care. But here's the cruel trick of bitterness. It protects you from the pain by cutting you off from joy. At first, it feels kind of like armor. You stop getting disappointed. You stop getting hurt. You stop feeling vulnerable. But soon you stop feeling everything. Laughter begins to get dull. Beauty seems distant. Kindness makes you suspicious. And underneath this all, there's that same longing that still is burning, still is hoping. Because bitterness does not kill longing. Instead, it just buries it. And when something beautiful tries to touch you, like a compliment or a chance at connection or a moment of real intimacy, when that happens, you sort of flinch because buried hope doesn't just disappear. It begins to harden. And once it hardens, anything that tries to soften that part of you feels like a threat. And that's why bitterness looks like anger. But actually, it's grief in self-defense. It's a man that's saying, I can't afford to care again because the last time I did it, it almost destroyed me. And that's not irrational. Some of you listening have been betrayed. You've been ghosted and abandoned and experienced being belittled, overlooked. And you've shared your heart only to watch people walk away from it. You've tried to be the good guy, the kind guy, the real guy. And you were punished for it. So now, every time your heart tries to open again, bitterness steps in and says, no, I'm in charge now. I'm the one who protects us. That part of you, bitter as it may be, is trying to be your bodyguard. But a bodyguard that never steps aside becomes more like a prison guard. And that's when bitterness turns toxic. That's when you stop just defending yourself and instead you start attacking others. You start resenting people who seem happy. You start mocking people who still believe in love. You start scrolling with a smirk, judging everyone who dares to want something you gave up on. And here's the gut punch of a truth. Sometimes you start hating people who have what you still secretly want. And you can't admit that want anymore, because wanting that means hope. Hope means risk, and risk means pain. And so instead you mock it. You kill the thing inside that you that could help you to still dream. And in its place, you build a certainty that everyone's fake, a certainty that women only care about looks or money, a certainty that people just suck and I'm better off alone without them. See, bitterness offers you that certainty. And it feels good at first. But certainty without curiosity is just numbness with a mask on. Because when you know everything, you stop growing. And when you've already decided what the world is, you can't be surprised by joy anymore. You've already closed the door, and bitterness locks that door and throws away the key. So here's the thing that no one tells you about bitter people. They were once the most hopeful amongst us. They were not born cold. They became that way, one heartbreak at a time. They were the ones who used to write poems, and they're the ones who used to send long messages, and they were the ones who showed up when it mattered. But life kept cutting their legs out from under them, and eventually they stopped getting back up, because they thought, if I keep getting up, it just means getting hurt again. So why should I bother? But when you stop rising, something inside of you begins sinking. And slowly resignation replaces resilience. You stop trying to be understood. And instead you start assuming that no one ever will understand you. You stop trying to connect, and you start building your identity on being misunderstood. That's the insidious power of bitterness. It doesn't just change how you feel, it rewrites who you think you are. And you're no longer the one who wants a connection. You're the one who instead rejects it, who doesn't need that kind of connection, who's better off without it. Accept that you're not, because you're human. And humans, we don't do well in exile, even self-imposed exile. Because when you lock yourself away, even if it's just to protect your heart, you don't just avoid harm. No, you avoid healing as well. And now every interaction is filtered through suspicion. Someone who is kind to you, you wonder, what do they want from me? Someone who compliments you, you assume that they're lying. Someone who offers love, you brace for betrayal already. It's not that you can't believe them. It's that you don't know how. Because bitterness has made trust feel like foolishness. It's trained you to to see sincerity as a setup. And so instead of leaning in, you instead lean back. Instead of softening, you sharpen. Instead of receiving, you deflect. And eventually you start teaching others to do the same as well. You start making jokes about being heartless. You tell younger men don't catch feelings. You nod at the memes that mock vulnerability, and you pass the bitterness down just like a family heirloom. It's not because you're evil, but it's because it feels like protection. It feels like the only way to survive a world that keeps wounding you. And so you keep on that path. Let me ask you this. What if bitterness is not the only way to shield yourself? What if integrity can be your protection instead? Integrity, not as in moral superiority, no. Integrity as in alignment. What if your inner world and your outer life could actually line up? When you no longer pretend that you don't care. When you stop burying your longing under layers of sarcasm and, and under layers of detachment. Because here's what's really wild. Like when you own your longing, when you say, yeah, like I recognize it there, you in essence stop needing others to 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 validate it. You become powerful again. Not because you never felt the pain, but because you've stopped pretending that you don't. Owning your longing is a form of resistance. It says something like this: I will not let disappointment rewrite my nature. I will not let betrayal become my blueprint. I, I will not let heartbreak convince me that I am unworthy of love and connection. And that's where this bridge begins. Because bitterness thrives in isolation, but healing happens in connection, real connection, messy, honest, and unfiltered connection. The kind where someone sees through your sharpness and chooses to stay anyways. The kind where you can admit, I'm scared I'm going to get hurt again. And they don't try to fix you, they just hold space for you. But you only get there by risking something bitterness told you could never risk again. And that is hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, not everyone is out to use you. Hope that intimacy is possible, not just admiration. The hope that who you are is enough, even if you've been told you have nothing to offer. This is the quiet revolution that shifts bitterness into rebirth. It's where you choose vulnerability again, and you choose being present again, and you choose connection again after a long time. Not because it's safe, but because it's worth it. That's the power of intimacy. Intimacy I describe as into-me seeing intimacy. Letting someone see the parts of you that have never healed. Letting someone witness your wounds without needing to rescue you. It's in that witnessing, not fixing, that that wholeness begins again. And this is where integrity anchors you, because bitterness made you perform. It made you pretend. It made you adapt into someone who's cool and aloof and untouchable. But integrity says no more scripts, no more masks, no more shutting down my soul just to seem invincible. You you become aligned. You become honest. You become whole. And and from that place, you're no longer waiting for someone to save you. You're, in essence, building a life that you can live in. A life where your hope is not naive, it's actually courageous. A life where your softness isn't weakness. It's it's evidence that you're still human. A life where your love isn't a bait, it's more of an offering. So let me close with this. If if you've found yourself bitter, if you felt the fire of resentment that's rising in your chest, if you've started if you've started to look at people who seem happy and thought, that will never be me, I, I, I want you to know something. Bitterness is not your final form. You can actually trace it back, and you can find the moments that you stopped hoping, the moment you stopped believing, and you can choose to hope again, and you can choose to believe again. You can find the moments you stopped trusting and begin again with people who are worthy of your trust. You can find the moment that you gave up on being seen. And and in so doing, you can reclaim the right again to be known. Because underneath every bitter man is a tender boy who once just wanted to be loved without condition. That boy is not gone. He's waiting. And you, with integrity and intimacy in hand, are the one who can bring him back home again. That's that's how you go from longing to loving. Not by erasing the pain, but by refusing to let it be the ending.